At the heart of Manhattan stood the renowned Harmony Heights Conservatory, a private music school where tuition cost more than most mortgages, and the halls echoed with symphonies played by prodigies in designer clothes. It wasn't just a school, it was a sanctuary for the elite, where children of CEOs, diplomats, and celebrities perfected the art of music. Among the marble floors and gold-framed portraits of former graduates walked a quiet, unnoticed man, Mr. Samuel Hayes, the school's janitor. He was in his early 60s, slightly stooped, with silver strands mixed in his dark hair and tired eyes that seemed to carry decades of untold stories. Students rarely looked at him. To them, he was just Sam the Mop, invisible, necessary, forgettable. But Samuel carried a secret. Many years ago, he had been a gifted pianist, accepted into Juilliard on scholarship, praised for his natural improvisation and jazz instincts. He'd once played late nights in Harlem clubs, dreaming of stages like Carnegie Hall. But life, cruel and sudden, had pulled the rug out from under him. A tragic car crash had taken his wife and left him alone with a baby daughter. He'd abandoned music, taken odd jobs, and buried his talent beneath bills and grief. Still, every time he passed a piano, something stirred in his soul. One crisp winter morning, before the students arrived, Samuel entered the school's grand recital room to mop the polished floors. The sun spilled through tall windows, lighting up the centerpiece of the room, a pristine, custom-made Fazioli grand piano, the crown jewel of the conservatory. It belonged to Savannah Whitmore, the school's most celebrated student, a 17-year-old virtuoso whose father was a Silicon Valley tycoon. She was brilliant, beautiful, and known for being fiercely possessive of her instrument. No one dared touch it, but Samuel couldn't help himself. Something about the morning air, the quiet room, the glint of light on the keys. It was too much. He approached the piano slowly, reverently, like greeting an old friend. He sat down, barely breathing, and let his fingers fall gently on the keys. A low, soft melody flowed, bluesy, aching, and deeply human. For just a minute, the room was filled with a sound not from sheet music, but from memory. It was jazz, pure and unfiltered, like something pulled from a soul that had seen too much and still dared to sing. But then the door opened. Savannah entered with two of her friends, all three carrying designer bags and morning coffees. She stopped in her tracks, eyes narrowing. "Is he playing my piano?" she asked, her voice cold and sharp. The others laughed. One boy muttered, "Guess he thought he was auditioning for America's Got Talent." Samuel leapt to his feet, horrified. I'm sorry, I meant no harm." Savannah walked closer, folding her arms. "You don't get to touch this piano," she snapped. "It's worth more than your life. Go back to your mops, old man." The laughter that followed pierced deeper than any insult. Samuel lowered his eyes, nodded silently, and walked away. Back to his cart, back to invisibility. But Savannah stayed behind, her gaze lingering on the piano. Her friends were still joking, but she wasn't listening anymore. Because for just a moment, when he played, something inside her had stirred, and she couldn't explain why. The auditorium was packed. It was the monthly showcase night at Harmony Heights Conservatory, an invitation-only evening where students performed for faculty, donors, and elite families. Tonight's headliner was Savannah Whitmore, as usual. Her name alone was enough to fill every velvet seat in the room. Backstage, Mr. Samuel Hayes stood in the shadows, wiping down a dusty stool. He had long since pushed the morning's embarrassment from his mind. He knew his place. He was here to clean, not to be noticed. But then he heard it, his name. "Mr. Hayes, would you join me on stage?" He froze. At first, he thought he'd misheard, but when he peeked around the curtain, he saw Savannah standing under the spotlight with a microphone in her hand. Her voice was steady. "Earlier today, I overheard Mr. Hayes playing. What I heard was real, honest, and I think all of you should hear it too." Whispers rippled through the crowd. The headmistress stood, looking confused. "Savannah, this is highly irregular." "I know," Savannah interrupted, "but music isn't just about perfection, it's about soul, and you need to hear his." The silence that followed was thick. Some people shifted uncomfortably. A few parents chuckled, expecting some sort of joke. But Samuel, he walked. Slowly, nervously, he made his way across the stage. His janitor's uniform looked out of place under the golden lights. He didn't speak. He didn't bow. He just sat at the piano. For a few seconds, he stared at the keys. Then, with a deep breath, he began to play. The first notes were soft, uncertain, like testing forgotten waters. But as his fingers moved, the music grew. It wasn't a piece from a book. It wasn't rehearsed. It was his. A slow, haunting jazz improvisation full of sorrow and love, of a life lost and a passion reborn. The room fell utterly still. Savannah's father stopped checking his watch. The headmistress sat down. Even the donors, used to formal sonatas and technical perfection, sat breathless as Samuel played with something none of their children could be taught: raw emotion. When he finished, he didn't wait for applause. He simply stood and began to walk off the stage. But the applause came anyway. First a few claps, then more. Then the entire hall stood in a roaring ovation. People cheered. Some had tears in their eyes. Samuel turned, stunned. He hadn't expected that, not even close. The headmistress approached him with shaking hands. "Mr. Hayes, that was extraordinary. Why didn't you ever tell us?" Samuel smiled softly. "Would you have listened if I did?" Savannah stepped forward. "I almost didn't," she admitted, "but I'm glad I did." In the days that followed, the video of his performance, secretly recorded by a student, went viral. Janitor Jazz trended for days. Musicians around the country shared it. Even Juilliard reposted it, calling it the most heartfelt improvisation we've heard in years. The school officially appointed Samuel Hayes as an adjunct faculty member for jazz improvisation. The same students who once ignored him now sat in a circle around the piano, hanging on his every word. Savannah, too, began spending time with him, not as a superior but as a student. She asked him to mentor her, and together they created a duet for the next showcase. As for Samuel, he didn't need fame. He didn't need riches. All he needed was for someone to listen, and finally they had.